Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Shawnee Mission School District for January 31st. It's not that warm out yet.
Wishful thinking.
This calls the meeting to order, and our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Because we moved the meeting to Thursday night this week, we had some young people scheduled to be here to help us with that pledge, but they had something even more fun planned tonight, and so they said, we'll pass on the move to Thursday, but you guys can handle it yourself. So we'll have the students from the elementary school come next time and join us. A couple other things I'll note real quick. Because of the move on Thursday, Mrs. Mack was not able to change a previous commitment, so she won't be joining us today. And lastly, I want to recognize any students that are here for a government class or for Scouts or any other program like that. Do you want to raise your hand if you're here for something for school? All right, great. Thank you and welcome. With that, we'll move on to item 1.03, which is the adoption of the agenda. I'll seek a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodburn.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. All those in favor of the adoption of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. That's 6-0. We move on to item 1.04 is the approval of the minutes from our last regular meeting, which was January 14th. I'll seek a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Zila.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. All those in favor of approving the minutes from January 14th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That passes 6-0. Move on to item 1.05, which is the approval of the minutes from our special meeting on Monday, January 28th. Seek a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodburn.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Owsley. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That passes 6-0. We move on to item 2.01, and that is the Superintendent Report. Dr. Fulton.
Thank you very much. Well, we want to start off by giving you a quick strategic planning update. Next Tuesday is our kickoff. We'll have members of the site councils and the Strategic Planning Steering Committee, along with board members, join us at Shawnee Mission West for an evening of just talking about some big picture direction of the district, describing the process, and getting an opportunity to interact with one of the tools that we're going to use, which is Thought Exchange, as we begin to collect personal thoughts on future direction of the district. We also are kicking off the Technology Task Force. We're in the process of finalizing membership for that group this week. And once that membership is finalized, then they will begin the process of setting dates when they'll meet. And that work will happen this spring. Want to go through a list of a couple things from our schools, and then we'll do a facilities update from Kitty. Hawker Grove had a teacher that was named finalist in the national contest, Patty Winkler. Hawker Grove Middle School social studies teacher. She's a Hawker Grove social studies teacher, and she was one of 20 finalists in a nationwide Help Write Their Life Stories contest. Winkler was nominated by a former student who shared that she made history matter to her students through reading. The honor included a $250 grant for books and reading materials. So congratulations to her. What a great honor, especially when you're nominated by a student. This past weekend, Shawnee Mission had the honor of hosting the Johnson County Spelling Bee. The event brought together 75 of the top spellers from around the county. 8 students advanced to the championship round, including Aisha Basser from Briarwood Elementary School and Theodore Oli from Trail Ridge Middle School. A list of all Shawnee Mission participants will be shared on the district website. And we're very pleased to host this academic competition in cooperation with our partners from the other Johnson County school districts. Evan McNeely Phelps, who is a junior at Shawnee Mission West High School, received honorable mention for his entry in a nationwide student television network contest. Evan produced a 1-minute public service announcement about the importance of ending plastic pollution. McNeely Phelps broadcast teacher is Kelly Gill. So we congratulate him and also his teacher on this fine work. And then finally, readers from all Shawnee Mission middle schools recently gathered to compete in the annual Battle of the Books competition. These students were presented with trivia questions based on books they read from the 2018-2019 William Allen White Children's Book Award Master List. A team of Hawker Grove students are in first place, and a team of Indian Hills Middle School students are in second place. And that's always very exciting. So congratulations to all the students who participated in Battle of the Books. And then finally, I do want to make note that this is still a month where we celebrate the Board of Education. Now, originally, we were going to have a choir for you tonight, but they were busy. The schedule kind of interrupted that. And while we thought we could have an administrative song for you, we thought that that would not be appreciated. So anyway, we're just so proud of you as a board, the work that you do as volunteers to take care of over 27,000 children in the Shawnee Mission School District. Thank you for your volunteerism, for your work, and for your deep commitment to our community. So thank you. And with that, that concludes my, oh wait, I have one more. Dr. Southwick is going to do a quick facilities update.
Yeah, mainly want to focus on where we are with Brookwood. I've got to give a lot of credit to Mr. Robinson, Tyler Clubb, and Dr. Hubbard have worked really all year long to make sure that we will be ready for the transition of students to go from Indian Creek, Brookwood Indian Creek, back to their new home in Brookwood. We are on schedule. As we've done in the past, we've given an opportunity for teachers to have some extra days in the schedule. Since we have extra minutes there, it does not require elementary students from that building to do any kind of extra days, so that's good. We will coordinate the move like we have with our other schools. As you might remember, we have moved into schools before at spring break and also around winter break, and we're prepared to do that again. We will, like we have with the other facilities, have a ribbon cutting ceremony where all of you will be invited. Dr. Fulton will get a big pair of scissors and we will cut the ribbon. But we try to let the students and staff get in the building a little bit, settle in, make it feel like it's their building. Then we can ask them to be involved and plan, and we'll celebrate. And we'll work with J.E. Dunn, the builders of that building, to coordinate that event. We anticipate that that will be later this spring. So we're on track and we're excited once again in a short period of time to open up our 7th new elementary school in the Shawnee Mission School District. Very short report on the Aquatic Center. Drove out by the other day. The parking garage is up now, and they are putting the glass in the south area. They still have it winterized with a lot of plastic, but they're putting glass in. And Jeremy Baum says he'd very much like to have a warm day to get the glass in on the north end where the wind blows. In addition to that, they are at current digging the deep end of the pool. So they're underway. We're still looking at a summer opening for that building, and already working with our coaches in the coordination of opening that facility and the way it'll be utilized by our students and our staff. So we're excited about that. And I might mention that brings us, we're getting closer to the end of the last issue. And as I've spoken over the last several months in strategic planning, decisions and thought processes about what the next round might be will be discussed. And I look forward to what that might look like as that strategic planning committee delivers their plan to you. So that's my report.
Great.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Questions, Dr. Sinclair?
Just a quick, passing along a comment I've heard from a couple of parents in the swim community who are responsible for clubs and meets, already looking for pricing to sign up for meets starting next year in the Aquatic Center. So just wanted to,
Yeah, everybody's excited.
everybody's excited.
Yeah.
Wanted to
And
pass that
just,
along.
just as a reminder, as many of those people that we can get to utilize that pool, it helps us reduce our costs. So we're excited to have them there too.
Yeah, so they're just looking for the rate so they can sign on the dotted line.
Fantastic.
Working on that.
Anyone else?
I'm sure you will.
Thank you for the update. With that, we'll move on to item 2.02, and that's board report, and we'll check with our board members to see if there's any updates. Reverend Guy, anything from PTA?
No report.
All right, thank you. And Mrs. Owsley, you can report on SMAF as well as perhaps anything having to do with a advocacy trip to DC.
Well, I don't have anything from SMEF because we haven't met since the last time we were together. I did join KASB and the National School Boards Association in DC this last week. We were advocating on behalf of getting additional funding for the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. The federal government, when they passed that in 1975, promised to fund it at 40%, and they are currently not even funding it at 16%, and that impacts schools across the country. It definitely impacts us here. We all know the cost of special education and how it would be useful if folks would chip in what they had said that they would. I will say that all of the senators and representatives that we met with were very positive and open to listening to what we had to say and how it would benefit not just our students who receive special education services, but all of our students, because we make up for that shortfall in funding out of general education funding. The Kansas delegation was the only delegation that brought our kids with us, and so we got in a lot of doors. It was very useful, and I used my own frequent flyer miles, so the district did not have to pay for us to attend, so yay, frequent flyer miles for that. I think that based off of the feedback we received and what the people who are smarter than me said from the National School Boards Association is they anticipate that we will get additional funding, but that this is going to be something that takes us a couple of years of repeating. So anyone who felt like reaching out to their federal electeds, be it congresspeople or senators, to encourage them to support funding idea. I know Senator Roberts has previously introduced legislation to bring funding for that up, so he is supportive. And like I said, the other folks said that they were supportive, but when they have that email or that postcard or that communication from a constituent saying, I support you doing this, that gives them what they need to go in and battle for it. So it was a good trip, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to go, and hopefully in a couple of years we'll be able to get some additional dollars.
Thank you for that update. And KSB, Mrs. Zila.
Yes, this is Big Advocacy Month. We had the Advocacy in Action 2 days on January 16th and 17th this month in Topeka. And on Wednesday, we had an outlook from Mark Tolman, who is the advocacy expert, I think, from KASB. Lieutenant Governor Lynn Rogers came and spoke with the group, which was enlightening, kind of like the look ahead with Governor Kelly in the governor's office. We visited the Capitol and saw lots of our delegation just roaming around the Capitol. You see lots of them. I sat in on 2 K-12 committee meetings. They're kind of getting, their rules in place and that sort of thing. So it was very early in the session to really hear of anything of any substance there. And then we had a reception with all the legislators back at the hotel after the State of the State, which happened to be there that evening as well. So it was a well-timed visit there. They had some breakout sessions on Thursday. I went to most of the mental health ones and those that have clinics embedded in schools, which was an interesting thing to see what's going on around the state of Kansas in that regard. And then that afternoon we had our board of directors meeting, which is a little less exciting. We're talking about building renovations and audits and pension plans and that sort of thing. So, but that was my full 2 days there in Topeka this month.
Thank you, and thank you for your service on the KSB board.
Thanks.
Dr. Sinclair, additional updates on legislative.
I think I'll just add to that just a little piece to the advocacy in action. I think both Ms. Owsley and Mr. Stratton, you were there as well, and we kind of all were able to attend a couple of different of the breakout sessions. So in addition to kind of hearing more about what the mental health pilot study is learning, we also attended some, I think we all covered between the four of us, a federal advocacy update, which focused a lot on the IDEA and funding, getting that funding up from 12 to 40% at the federal level. Discussions on kind of a potential constitutional amendment, and let's see what else.
Bond cap, I don't know if anyone attended that one.
Yeah. So it was always very informative. The only other piece that we learned connected to the KSB Legislative Committee was that there is a bill that's being introduced to address kind of this gap between when boards are elected and when organizational meetings are established, so when officers are elected. So there is a bill being introduced around that to provide, I believe, more local control to boards to determine when those votes and those organizational meetings will occur.
Thank you. And I'm going to tag on one more piece about KASB. We as board members receive a monthly magazine from KASB, our state organization. And you probably all had a chance to read it cover to cover, but in the back there is
I have them all marked.
there you go.
Yes.
So all of the award winners that our Public Relations and Media Department, I think, was in every category. And
There were
Mrs.
10
Zila, you wanna share?
categories. We had 10 categories. We were in 7 of them, and also an outstanding sweepstakes award. So kudos to Kristen. I know you're in the back there. I know you've heard this before, and congratulations on all the great media that you do for us. But anyway, it was, again, in print for all to see this month. Just this week, I believe, I got this magazine. So anyway, great kudos to you. Thank you for what you do.
Exactly. Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to Constituent Services. Mrs. Goodburn, is there an update?
Other than we have a meeting scheduled this coming week, I believe, so, no, other than that, no.
Thank you. Professional Services, do we have an update there?
We don't really have an update
Okay.
at this time.
All right. Thank you for those. With that, we'll move on to item 2.03, and that is petty cash report. Dr. Fulton, do you have an update there?
Yes, and Russ Knapp's going to come forward and give us a brief report. And he's going to stay there for a while, right? A couple of the next items.
Yes, we got about 3 reports for you, but good evening. So it's that time of the year where we do our required state statute to do a semi-annual report for petty cash and student activities report. We have very little usage of the petty cash anymore since we've been using purchasing cards. The student activities report is as of 12/31, and that's the building's funds that the kids raise through gate receipts, their clubs, concessions, fundraisers, et cetera. So do you have any questions about those 2 specific reports? The next report is our monthly board financial report. That is as of December 31st, 2018. As of now, I don't have any abnormalities to report to you for the supported funds, but we review those on a monthly basis. I'll probably be reporting back to you in a couple months that we're keeping an eye on our electricity. We had a cold winter, but we really don't feel comfortable narrowing down a number until we really get through January or February, because sometimes we can make that up if we get a good spring. So we'll keep you informed on that. The other item on the monthly board report is Title I, which we'll touch on here in a minute. And it's mainly about the reduction of funding that we've been receiving. So is there any questions on the monthly board report before I move on?
Questions about the board report?
Well,
Dr. Sinclair?
so that last column, actuals as percentage of budget, when some of those line items are showing 100%, that would mean that if there were an additional expenditure, it would be covered by a transfer or the?
No, what that really is that we encumber. So we went out and we've already been to the board and got approval, so we've done a purchase order.
Okay.
So that column represents actual expenditures plus what we've encumbered.
Okay.
So if you looked at the transportation, it's pretty close to 100%. But as you get an actual expenditure, the encumbrance comes down. So
Okay.
it just offsets itself.
Okay, all right,
Okay,
thank you.
yeah.
Other questions about the board financial report? Okay.
Okay. So at this time, Dr. Fulton thought it would be a good time to do a little refresher on this since we're kicking off our strategic plan. Just kind of give you a reminder of the different buckets of money, if you will, of what the district receives. So I was going to go through this slide. This kind of represents the 5 groups of funds that we've used over the year, and this is how we group them. So the first one is the supported funds, or what we call operating funds. They make up about 61% of our total budget, 72% of that comes from the state. So that's your general state aid and your special education state aid. The rest is all local. That's going to be your LOB, local tax, and then some smaller miscellaneous revenues. These funds are unrestricted. This is what we use for day-to-day operations. And in kind of the order that we spend these monies on, salary and benefits, about 83%. Student transportation is 6%, supplies and services 6%, utilities 4%, and others are 1%. The next big group of funds is our capital outlay funds. These are restricted, and they're restricted because state statute says you can only spend them on certain things. This is all local money, so this is the 8 mills that we levy. State law does not allow you to go above 8. You can go below, but not above 8. So we currently do not receive any state aid. So they resumed the state giving out capital outlay state aid. We do not qualify for that. So this is all local taxes. So we spend most of our capital outlay nowadays on bond debt and our Apple leases. Okay, so we spend about $19.5 million right now on paying off the debt for the $85 million bonds that we sold. So these are the capital outlay bonds. These are not the bonds that we sold for $223 million. These are just capital outlay bonds. They have to be paid off in 5 years. That's state law. So the good news is when we get to 21, 22, those bonds will be retired at a very low coupon rate. But we do spend about $19.5 million on retiring those bonds plus the Apple leases when we refresh our Apple devices. We spend another about $11.3 million on just construction and renovations. Those are cycle projects. So if you can think about HVAC, parking lots, bleachers, et cetera, that's what this is for. And when you have close to about 55 to 60 buildings that we have to maintain, it goes pretty fast. The other one is, the next item that we spend is maintenance salaries. So we have about $4.3 million worth of maintenance salaries in our capital outlay fund. So these would be your plumbers and your electricians, painters, et cetera. They've been in there for a few years, but they take care of a lot of those, what we call our work orders, our jobs that we have across the district. Spent about $4.2 million on technology and software, and this is not the Apple devices, but this is maintaining, repairing the devices, software, other maintenance, annual maintenance contracts that IT might have. And then a little bit on furnishing equipment, and then we're allowed to buy uniforms. You know, when they expanded the guidelines so we can buy band uniforms, choir uniforms, et cetera. So the next group there, next to it is the bond debt. So this is where we issued the January 2015, we did the authorization, did the vote, got approval to do $223 million worth of bonds, and then this is the bond and interest fund where we have to pay off that debt, and those are 20-year bonds, okay? So we budget about $29.6 million worth of debt this year to pay off those bond and interest. The next group is the flow-through. That's state and local. It's flow-through because it basically just touches our books and then it goes right back to the state. So this is the CAPERS contribution. This is what the quarterly contribution. They send us a chunk of change each quarter, touches our books for about a day, and then we have to send it right back. The other one is the cost of living, which is all local dollars, and it runs through the weighted school formula. The next group is federal funds. Those are restricted by the grant guidelines. So our big two groups there is our Title 6B, which we use for special education, and our Title I, which we use for additional support in our high poverty schools, and then we also have Title II-A, Title III, and Title IV. That is all federal dollars, and there's no state or local there. Self-supported is the last group. The money that is generated for those funds is a fee, so it's a board-approved fee, like a textbook rental fee, gifts that we get from our community, and non-federal grants that we apply for and receive. Those two funds, federal funds and the self-support funds, they're meant to stand alone, but there's times when we perhaps, like I'm going to show you here in a minute about Title I, where if the need arises, additional support always has to come from the operating funds, okay? For many years, we always try to, the intent is always for these to stand on their own, but when we talk about Title I, we'll give you an update on that. Okay, and this is just a pie chart of the expenditures by fund type. So it's just to show you a visual that 61% of our budget is spent on operating funds, and then another 21% is spent on capital outlay. And again, another pie chart just to show you the breakdown of our operating funds, which is our, our biggest fund. So 83% there is on salary and benefits. Kind of looks like a Pac-Man, doesn't it? So the last chart, or the last slide that we're going to talk about is our Title I issue. So as you can see on the left side of the slide, we're going to start with our funding issue. In 16-17, we kind of peaked at 4.2 million. 3 years later, we're at 3.2 million. So this is our current year allocations that we get from the state. The reason why the allocation decreased so much is because the state's allocation from the feds decreased. If you recall, about 2 years ago, the state of Kansas lost 9% of the Title I that the Fed. So the Fed didn't reduce it. I think the Fed actually increased their allocation. The state of Kansas portion just decreased 9%. Therefore, it trickled down to Shawnee Mission, and we lost close to $1 million over 3 years ago. With Title I funds, you're allowed to carry forward 25%. And you can carry forward also, in my mind, is fund balance. Kind of the same thing. You got to have that buffer, you got to have that cushion, you got to have that fund balance for this reason. One of the things that the timing, a lot of times we usually don't know our allocation to June or July. It's pretty hard to plan for a school year that starts in August to put programs and staffing in place when you don't know what your allocation is until June or July. So that fund balance or that carryover is there for that buffer to prevent, so you can still offer that services, but it gives you a year to plan for the next year. So again, we probably didn't find out till July what our allocations were for this year. And so by the end of this year, that carry forward will be gone. We will not have any fund balances in this to carry forward. So when we go to 1920, we'll be operating only on that current year allocation. So our plan is to break even and build balances. So to do that, we've got to reduce the Title I budget by $1,095,000, pretty much the amount that we've been reduced the last 2 years. So how we're going to do that is the social workers that are currently in the Title I, they'll be moved to the general fund, so they'll be absorbed into the general fund operating funds. That'll be $480,000 that will shift to the operating funds. Then we're going to reduce our Title I elementary schools. They're going to have to go from 13 to 8, so we'll lose 5 elementary schools will be removed from Title I. That will save, well, to do that, the results of that will move $208,000 worth of positions to the general fund again, so that'll be absorbed into the general fund. And then 407,000 positions will be eliminated. Okay, so those positions will go away, but the people in those positions will move to other positions via attrition. So a position will come open, they'll move into those slots, okay? But as far as just the Title I, there'll be a cut there in those positions of 407,000. So how do we absorb that into the operating funds? Well, that's kind of why we're doing this now, because we're starting to develop our budget for 1920. So part of it will be the reorganization that Dr. Fulton's looking at. There'll be some cost savings from that reorganization to help offset some of the absorption of the Title I money. We'll look at our budget. We might have to reallocate dollars from other budget lines to cover the Title I. Attrition, and then any new money we get from the state, we can also earmark for this. So there's 3 or 4 things that we can do to absorb that into the general fund. But we started early enough that, we have 5 months to really plan for that when we kick over to July 1. So going forward, 8 of our highest elementary schools will continue, 2 of our middle schools. The support for professional development, we plan to increase it a little bit. We'll continue to title support for Jumpstart and foster care, and with the hopes of building that carry forward or that fund balance back up to avoid any of these situations in the future. And I'll stand for any questions.
I do want to add one thing. First of all, thank you for the report. It is really important in title funding to maintain balances, because you don't get the money. You don't even get confirmed how much money you're going to get until typically, what, Russ, July?
Yes.
The only way that you can plan for the upcoming school year is to make sure that you have enough carryover to fund those positions for that year. That is a typical practice that most districts engage in, and it's a good practice.
Mm-hmm.
The last couple of years, when you're taking the kind of hits that we did in Title I, I think the district did a great job of trying to maintain existing services. And they did that in part by drawing down those fund balances, that carryover. Well, we're at a point now where those no longer exist. And so we have to do two things. We have to build those balances back up to a reasonable level, and then also begin to take that $1 million of expenditures and reduce it. And we're going to work really hard to make sure that we maintain vital services in all of the schools that are impacted by, for example, maintaining instructional specialists at the schools that are no longer title. But those jobs are going to have, the expenditure for those jobs is going to have to move out of title and into the operating fund. And then the other one is, as noted on here, that, you know, we have funded through title our social workers. And those too need to be moved into the general fund. So Russ has laid it out. We're going to address this by looking at reducing cost or paying really for it out of the operating fund through a combination of attrition and reorganization. That's the only way that we can really make sure that we're doing the very best we can to keep dollars in the classroom, and that is our goal. And so at the next board meeting, I'll come forward with some additional information on how we're going to do that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, as will Mr. Knapp.
Questions from board members? Yes, Mrs. Owsley.
So I have a couple questions, and if I need to pause so that other people can go, I'm happy to do so. My first question is to clarify, the money from the federal government didn't reduce, it was the money from the state was reduced? So that I understand where that
The state's allocation was reduced by 9%.
Okay.
So their piece that they got from the feds was decreased by 9%.
So it was decreased from the federal government, and then that was what was impacted for us, and we're just feeling it now because we were using the carryover balances to cover the losses.
Right.
And then on the social worker situation, to clarify, one of the issues when you pay for something with the Title I budget, if it is then provided at all of the schools, you can't use that Title I, you can no longer continue to use that Title I funding for that? Is that, like, if we were to have had social workers at all of our schools, we couldn't have used Title I funding to cover the cost of the social workers at the Title I buildings?
Yeah,
just for a point of clarification for folks.
There's a concept called supplant, and Russ can explain that.
Yes, so you're describing supplanting. So if we're providing something out of our operating funds, we're supposed to use our Title I dollars to provide something above and beyond that.
Right. I just know that had come up in previous conversations, and folks had wondered, you know, well, how is it or why is it that the Title I buildings have social workers and other buildings don't? And it was because of this concept of supplanting, and that is no longer going to be the case if we're using general fund dollars to cover the cost of social workers.
Right, but and Dr. Hubbard, you might jump in here, but the ones that are Title I schools, they're getting more FTE than your regular schools that are non-Title I. So that's above and beyond.
Gotcha. And then the FTE for the Title I buildings is going down in the buildings that will no longer be designated Title I? And if so, how many FTEs is that for those buildings that will no longer be designated Title I?
So for the 5 schools that will no longer be designated, it equates to either 1 to 3 people, depending on the building and depending on what their allocation was. I do apologize. There's a summary sheet for Title I that I just realized we didn't get uploaded. So we'll get that uploaded tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. That gives much more detail than this presentation gives for people that would want to see that, including the schools that will be reduced. But the actual positions, they vary depending on those 5 schools. In most cases, it's always going to be an aide position. Again, though, we would find a place for those particular people. And in some buildings, it is a math specialist or reading specialist, an innovation specialist. In some buildings, it was the instructional coach, and Dr. Fulton addressed that, saying we want to maintain those programs, so we'll make sure that those positions, those are the ones that would be moved to the general fund and the social workers. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to give an idea for folks at the buildings that are impacted of what this will look like for them practically moving forward next year.
And it varies from 1 to 3 people, and those principals do know who those people are at this point, and will be prepared to have those conversations. But it's 1 to 3 individuals per building.
And we're not lowering the middle schools that are Title I. We're continuing to have the 2 Title I middle schools.
We are, but the middle schools are only funded with 1 position and then PD funds. So in the scheme of the $2 million, they're only allocated about $100,000 each. So the bulk of the money is with those 8, will be with those 8, and has been with those 13.
Okay, I'll pause for now. I see Mary looking interested over here.
I'm sorry. I have to get a better poker face. So I actually want to just kind of back up from Heather's question. So there's going to be a lot of specifics about which schools and what FTE and all that.
Yes.
Can you speak to the process of how that gets rolled out? And
Absolutely.
what criteria are used to kind of make those decisions? Like, I'm assuming the building principals have been notified.
The building principals have known really all year. They were told even last year that this is a potential, our carryover funds are, we had to do something, and we've known that for a year, and those principals have known that. The 5 that are being impacted. And then at the beginning of the school year, I said, you guys, this is happening. You need to start that preparation now. So as the year goes through, and we told them that starting in March or April, if let's say an aide resigns in one of those 5 buildings after spring break, we probably wouldn't fill that job for the remainder of this year to prepare for that, rather than hiring someone and then having to turn around and move them 2 months later. So principals do know. I can tell you the 5 schools. I'm going to do this off the top of my head, so I'm going to do it slowly to make sure I don't say something incorrect. Pawnee, Rising Star, Broken Arrow, Blue Jacket Flint, and Roseland are the 5 that will no longer be title. And a couple of them have only been title for a couple years, so it hasn't been like they've been title for a really long time. But no matter how long you've been a title school, losing that staff will be impactful to them without question. So we're also doing some things on the general fund side to see, we allocate specialist, when I say specialist, reading specialist, math specialist, innovation specialist, on a formula basis. And so we're revisiting that formula to ensure, or to hopefully ensure, that those 5 schools would possibly be able to pick up a 0.5 or a 1.0, depending on how their demographics have changed. So what determines that you can be a Title I school? For us, we have used a 50% cutoff. Many of those schools hover at really 50% free and reduced lunch, yes. And that's how the state tells us to do it. We fill out an application that the only thing that we get to decide is the percentage. What percentage will we use to say is Title I? So we have traditionally used right at the 50% mark. Many of those schools are hovering and have been for a couple years around the 46, 47, 48, but we have maintained them as title schools, even though they're just a little bit below the 50 mark. In this new one, off the top of my head, I believe the lowest one will be 54% now. So there's a pretty distinct gap between 54% and about 48. And then there's a large group below the 48 and this group of 8 above the 54% free and reduced lunch. So that's how we sort of determined where that was. The other thing that has happened is we have these 5 schools in there, and then we have Brook Ridge Elementary that has leapfrogged them in 1 year. So even if we didn't reduce them this year, we would have had to add Brook Ridge, because you can't, The state doesn't allow you to sort of pick and choose, if you will. You have to go in the rank order of which they rank. And we fill out this huge report. It's pages and pages and pages long that you have to take into consideration kids that are on free and reduced lunch that attend non-public schools. So every Catholic school in our boundary, any Christian school, so any private school also gets consideration for title funds, and we allocate title funds to non-public schools as well as part of a federal requirement. So the free and reduced kids that sit in a, let's say a Neiman also are counted into their free and reduced population.
Okay. I can
Other
take a break.
questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Sinclair.
Yep. Go ahead.
All right,
Oh.
Mrs. Elms?
Back up? Okay, so, and then the other part of this, under the going forward portion, is that the impact to Jumpstart. So the buildings that are no longer going to have the Title I designation will no longer have Jumpstart in those buildings. Is that correct?
So Dr. Neal's going to talk about this in her presentation, but what has happened in the past is that Title I has funded the Title I schools, but we have received grants that picked up those other schools. So all of the district's Jump Start funding has come from Title, only did Title. Everything else has been a grant. So next year, we will fund the 8 Title schools, but we are still actively searching for grants to support those other schools that are not Title. But yes, right now, if we were to receive no grant or no, SMEP has also really supported Jumpstart, but if they were not to, or any grant was not to support, then just Title schools would be Jumpstart today, if I had to answer that today. But we are hoping for grants.
So if we receive additional grant dollars, it's possible that we'll have additional Jumpstart locations in addition to what will be preserved at the 8 remaining Title schools.
That's correct, and I'm going to look for Dr. Neal for a nod. Am I correct? Yes, okay.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm done.
Okay, Dr.
I won't
Sinclair.
ask to probabilities.
What would be the timeline to speak to some of those reorganizational kinds of efforts? Will that be at a future board meeting?
At our next board meeting, I
Okay.
think I'll be prepared to talk about the specifics related to both attrition and reorganization.
Okay. And what would you say to parents or staff who have questions about this? What should they do?
I think contact Dr. Hubbard's office, and they can respond to questions.
Okay.
You know, I do want to say this. This is always
Thank
hard. I think the hard part is, honestly, is that our federal funding's been reduced
Yeah.
as a state, and the hit for us is huge, $1 million. The fact that we've maintained services at prior year levels, even as you're taking these big hits, again, is a credit to the team. But literally, we have to cut $1 million. So, and we're going to do that, but in the course of doing that, preserve as much as we can, including the social workers and also the instructional coaches. Beyond that, then you just have to look and see what additional revenues might come in from the state. And I will add this. What we're going through, I think, is typical for districts. Whenever you rely on Title I funding for positions, you literally are dependent on what the federal government is going to give you, or the state, depending on the allocation that they get from the federal government, on what you're going to receive from them. And you literally don't know that till July. So it makes planning difficult, but it also makes sustainability of specific interventions like reading teachers, for example, challenging, because just because the Title I funding goes away doesn't mean that the needs go away. And so that's not unique to us. I think that's a challenge that districts really around the country have with federal funding, which goes back to your earlier comment. It's really important that the federal government step up and fund these programs to the very best of their ability, because it makes a difference at the local level.
Mary, I would add to your question about who to contact. They're more than welcome to contact me. I'll take any phone calls I need to take. If the comments are, or if the questions are specific to services in a building, I would encourage them to call their principal, because I'm just going to say, to answer specific questions about the building, principals will have to answer that. But if it's a general, broad question, send them my way. Otherwise, if you would send them to their building principals, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yes, Reverend Guy.
So I understand that this is necessary because of the reduced federal spending. Is any of it due to reduced number of enrollment that qualify for free and reduced lunches?
I would say absolutely yes. We haven't increased. We've been pretty stable for 3 years in regard, 3? 3 years in regards to free and reduced lunch. And buildings change significantly. Of these 5, the one that probably surprised me the most was Broken Arrow. And, but they had a boundary change that probably also impacted the number of kids receiving free and reduced lunch, as well as we anticipated, we only moved 26 kids out of Broken Arrow as the boundary change, but their enrollment's down by 80. And so that, they were kind of they were hovering, and we're like, well, they may or may not. Let's see how the boundary change kind of sort of plays out here. And it was an impact we really didn't anticipate. And it has to do with some housing issues that are going on in their particular boundary. But yes, enrollment, Brook Ridge, leapfrogging, we were not prepared for that. We didn't see that coming. And so our mobility has increased, especially in some particular schools, of kids coming in and out in a particular year. So yes, it does impact it, absolutely. The other thing that's important to note is all of our allocations to title schools is based on the previous year enrollment. And so for next year's application that we complete in October, it's called the LCP application, Local Consolidated Plan application. We will be filling out that application based on September 20th of this year. So it's always a year behind.
Yes, Mrs. Owsley.
I just wanted to clarify, or just to reiterate the fact that with the reduction of these positions, the folks in these positions will be able to fill other positions that people are vacating through retirement and through regular attrition, and so we anticipate being able to retain all of these people. It's just shifting around through normal shedding at the end of each year.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Additional questions? Thank you for the update. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else under board financial? All right, with that, move on to item 2.06. It's our time for public comment. I'll pass on reading the description of public comment. We have no one signed up. However, I'm not going to miss this opportunity to recognize our students one more time, and maybe even ask them if they would stand up and let us know what schools or organizations they're representing. There you go. The floor is yours. I did. Great. What other schools do we have represented today? Dad, give him a nudge. Great. All right, thank you. Anyone else brave enough? All right. And I'm going to put one more person on the spot. We have a visitor here, and I'm going to recognize Mrs. Donna Bisfield. Donna served our board for 24 years, and it's great to see you at a board meeting one more time. So thank you for being here, and welcome. We will now move on to item 3.0, which is a presentation. Dr. Fulton.
Yes, and I'm going to invite Dr. Joe Gilhouse and Paul Colwell to come up and present.
Good evening. We are excited about the opportunities and the possibilities that a community diploma completion program could bring to the Shawnee Mission School District. It's also known as Project Finish. Community Diploma Completion Program's a mouthful to say that, continuously. So if you think about, well, first off, we've been working on this for a little bit over 2 years. And so we wanted to make sure, we've been around the state, we've crossed the state line, we wanted to make sure that we were benefiting from no pitfalls that other programs have gone through, yet we wanted to make this the best that it could be for Shawnee Mission School District. And we currently have a 90% graduation rate in Shawnee Mission School District with our high schools. And if you cut that down and disaggregate that a little bit, you're down to approximately 150 students each year that do not receive a high school diploma with their 4-year cohort. So you have 4 years to get a diploma. Some do come back for a 5th year. But this program would give opportunities to 150 kids from possibly last year. But if you take that, since Shawnee Mission School District's never had this program in play, I want you to go back all of the years, 150, 150, 150 approximately, adds up. And that adds up to an awful lot of people that still live in our community that may not have had an opportunity to complete or get a high school diploma. So when you look at those numbers and you look at the research, and all of you are very much aware of the research that talks about challenges that students that don't complete a high school diploma face for many years to come, if not their whole life, that is an overwhelming amount of information. We felt like it was a logical next step in our alternative programs within our district to be able to offer Project Finish. So as you go to the next slide, am I not missing that there? All right. So we're going to kind of look at the who, what, where, when, and how, just the very basics, and I'll be brief. So really, as we start off, if we get an opportunity to start next school year, we'd like to look around the 1st of September is what we want to get the school year starting with our 5 high schools, alternative school. Look at a possible start of September 1st. It would be eligible for any Shawnee Mission School District resident that has passed their 4-year graduation date, or they're beyond their 4-year cohort. Any person would be eligible for that within our district. They would enroll in Project Finish to complete their high school diploma. The program would be housed at Horizons High School. It would be offered Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Friday, we're looking at probably ending a little earlier, so maybe 10 to 3 or 4. We haven't got the details on that yet. And we would be utilizing the current platform that we have in our district, Edgenuity, online. So there's no additional cost for that. And Mr. Caldwell is going to elaborate on some of the costs for the program because they are minimally. Ultimately, we hope to have it self-sustaining very, very soon. And ultimately, we would be actually making a profit, which you don't get to hear too often in public education. So
We hope. Good evening. Moving on to the benefits, Shawnee Mission's school district community members are able to complete their high school diploma. Obviously, it's a huge benefit, a program that has flexible schedule, comprehensive platform, and then a rigorous curriculum. Students receive their diploma after completing the state minimum of 21 credits. We would need to alter school board policy IHF in order for that to happen, but the difference is 2.5 electives, a half of PE, a half of financial literacy, and then the rest would be elective credit. And then the Shawnee Mission School District would be compensated approximately $709 per credit, completed up to 6 credits per academic school year. So approximately $4,254 per student per year. Next, the costs of 1 full-time teaching position to oversee this program. It's already accounted for as a part of our 1819 Shawnee Mission staffing formula, so total impact would be $0. We already have that position available. We believe that adding a counselor would be important for all alternative programs at Horizons High School, and the maximum impact is approximately $85,000. It may be less than that depending on who, with salary and benefits, that is. Technology update to existing lab, we already have it there. The infrastructure is there, so it would be minimal. I put 0 just because that was the number that was given to me by technology. We like the word or the number 0. And then online platform expenses are already covered by Shawnee Mission. Edgenuity is already being paid for. So that's that.
questions? This is the very, very basic. There's an awful lot of paperwork and information and paperwork to the state to apply for the online program, but we didn't want to overwhelm you with all those pieces and just give you the basics of what we're hoping to provide for our patrons. Yes.
Yes, Reverend Guy.
Just to clarify, this program would be available to anyone who lived within the district. They don't need to have been previously enrolled as a student?
Correct.
in
We
the
wanted to
district?
start with Shawnee Mission School District patrons first. Ultimately, you just have to be a resident of the state of Kansas. But we wanted to start with a core group, our district, and then potentially move out from there.
Okay.
Mrs. Housley.
And it doesn't matter how many credits they had before, they just have to complete that number of credits in the program, and then they'll come out with a diploma.
Yeah, so we're going to have students most likely that will transfer into us with 18, 19, 20 credits. We would work towards the state 21, whatever that looks like. And then we would issue a diploma from Shawnee Mission School District. We picked the state minimum of 21 because we potentially can get somebody that is 50, 60, 70 years old, that the required credits were 18 at that time, or 21 and a half, or 23, or 23 and a half like it is now. Or from a district that required additional. Some districts require up to 30, 32 credits, depending what it is. We would scale it back to the state minimum 21, which is obviously State Board of Education guidance.
And that would be one of the duties of the counselor, would transcribe all of those transcripts. They could come from several different states. They would take all of that paperwork, put it together, as counselors do every single day in our schools, and apply that to how it fits into the Shawnee Mission District requirements. And in that way would allow us to know what they need to get on Edgenuity.
Gotcha, thank you.
Mrs. Zila.
It seems like in some of the information that you gave us here that I saw the number 100. That's kind of, was that accurate as
So
who
the
you
background,
thought might be?
you talk about the background of the proposal?
Yes.
So I used 100 as a hopeful number, because we don't know what it's going to be. There's a similar program in Olathe called Step Up. Their variation of enrollment, sometimes they're at 100, sometimes they're at 200. So I was just using kind of an idea instead of talking about what possibly could be. Let's say we have 100 students that are past their graduation date, and I think I used that they get half of the credits potential, if you will. Then it generates, I think the number's like $200,000 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That would cover a lot of the costs that might be
Absolutely.
incurred in
And that was our goal, is that we would be able to recover the costs that we're spending with the counselor, and/or some other costs that we have through the students that would be a part of that. Hopefully maybe give
where you
back.
came up with the number there. And I
Yeah,
thought
it was
we
just a
have-
random number for an example.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You bet. Dr. Sinclair and then Mrs. Goodburn.
So 2 questions. So this would be a Shawnee Mission diploma, not a GED?
Correct.
Okay.
And with that, we would have to alter the board policy IHF to cover that, yes.
Right, okay. And the compensation comes from what source of revenue?
Compensation for the $85,000 for the counselor?
For the $709 per credit, the $4,200.
That comes from the state.
From the state?
Yes.
So the cost to the individual completing their high school diploma is?
At this point in time, it's zero.
Okay.
The one thing that we are discussing, and we're in collaboration with Chief Douglas, is potential background check or some type
Like a
of.
fee or something like that?
Some type of fee for that, whether we would take that fee or whether we would pass that on to the students.
Okay. I had a third question, but I forgot. This is so exciting. I'm so excited about this. Thank you for doing all this work.
Mrs. Goodburn.
I had a question in the long report you gave us. There was a possibility of some other benefits to this for
Yes.
our students. Can you talk about that, the out-of-school suspension?
Yeah, so right now, we currently, through tutoring funds, we fund a long-term suspension sunset program for students who have been expelled. It's an afternoon program from Tuesday and Thursday afternoon program from 3:30 to 5:30. Currently, one of the items that I get feedback from parents is they would like it to be expanded more time. Now, it's difficult because they can't be on school premise when school is going in session. But if we were to do this program, then we would offer the opportunity for them to be there Monday through Friday after Horizons is out. So it'd be 3:30 to potentially 6 every single day. Now, there's mixing of funds. Obviously, we'd have to figure out that as far as the tutoring funds versus others. But it would give us an opportunity to serve those students 5 days a week potentially, where right now we're only serving them 2 days a week for 2 hours. And that's a program we started approximately 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Yes.
So then this would, do you anticipate then also students who might take it for their 5th year? So they've gone through 4 years and they're just short a couple of credits, so they would do that 5th year? and
Absolutely,
finish it?
if it's the right fit. It gets a little trickier when you start talking if they need special education services, and
Okay.
sometimes we'll shorten those schedules for a 5th-year senior to where they only come for 1 or 2 hours to reach that graduation, so they can continue to get the more personnel support from this traditional school as opposed to this, but it would be an option.
Okay. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
clarification, and I probably should know this, but we're going to be taking action on this item later in the meeting. At what point do you need actual board policy amended to also implement this?
Our paperwork is due by the middle of February to the state to apply for the online program, to get approval for the upcoming school year. So the paperwork is filled out. We didn't want to put the cart in front of the horse, so we were waiting and hopeful that it would be approved. So if it does get approved tonight, we would send that in, and we are right on track to begin and be ready to go by September 1. Assuming the personnel gets hired in a timely fashion, assuming we get the technology kinks and everything worked out, we'll be ready to go.
One caveat is
yeah.
we would have to come back to the board to do some modifications to IHF.
There you go.
And that would
That's
just
what I wanted.
happen prior to September 1st.
September 1st, okay.
Yes.
I wanted to know
Yes.
when we'd need to take action to be
Yes.
ready to go. Thank you. Other board member questions? Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
And with that, we have another presentation on Jumpstart.
Yes, and we're excited to bring you a Jump Start update. It's a wonderful program, and Dr. Leanne Lyons is going to provide that for us.
Members of the board, Dr. Fulton, and those joining us this evening, it is my pleasure to highlight the Jump Start to Learning program for you this evening, a program that we truly believe is making a difference for our early learners. Here you can see the objectives. For many of you are familiar with Jump Start to Learning, but those who are not, it is a 3-week summer program for our incoming kindergarten students aimed at giving them a boost in those school readiness skills. And as you know, kindergarten readiness is a key outcome in the Kansas CAN plan, Vision for Kansas Education. And so this program serves as an opportunity for us to provide some of those kindergarten readiness skills, and particularly helping for families and students who may not have access to a lot of those early learning programs, and so may be coming to us with very limited or no prior school experience, so they're able to gain not just academic skills, but also those social competencies and those emotional readiness, kind of the how you do school skills to be ready and off and running. And as teachers often tell us, they have leaders ready to go on day one who have come through that program. So we wanted to look at the program began in 2014, and as Dr. Hubbard alluded to, it was funded not just through Title I funds, but our Shawnee Mission Education Foundation was a champion of the start of that program. And we started from 3 humble beginning sites with 46 students, and over the last 5 years, last summer we had grown to 20 sites serving 337 students, and a total of nearly 1,100 students served in the program since its beginning. Interestingly, we put the combined demographics over the course of the program there for you to be able to see. And as you can see there, demographically, the Jump Start to Learning program does serve a much more diverse population as compared to the district as a whole. In 2016, we developed our own Shawnee Mission School District Universal Screener for kindergarten, and that continues today. We hold kindergarten roundup, and then following that, that's usually in April, and then in May, students come back and they take that universal screener. And as you can see from that snapshot of information there, over the course of each of the 3 years that it's been given, and it's built on those Kansas Early Learning Standards, so it measures, I think, 8 different areas. And students who participate in Jump Start not only take it initially at that initial screening date, but then we measure them again following Jump Start. And you can see that it is, even though it's a 3-week program, it's not fully closing the gap, but it does show promise in terms of increasing those incoming readiness skills. For example, last year, students gained a 9.9% gain just on that universal screening result. We also follow, thanks to Dan Grumman and his assessment, we take a look at the DIBELS, early literacy, and we look at students enrolled in the Jump Start program as compared to students who were not in the Jump Start program. And if you look at the initial one there with all, you can see that students, even those students participating in Jump Start, are less likely to be on grade level with those early reading skills as compared to those who do not participate. But keep in mind that their backgrounds are substantially different than the overall. So we dug a little deeper, and we wanted to look at if we limited those comparison groups. And so we put a few in there for you to see. So limiting for just students who qualify for free and reduced lunch support, you can see that those students participating in Jump Start are scoring higher, at least in the fall. The same for when we limit to English language learners and for the African-American student group. When limiting for that, you can see that all of them coming in, and that's just scoring at benchmark, scoring a little bit higher there. Now, when we look at the spring, you can see there that those gains kind of even off. They fall away over the course of the months and years to follow in all categories except for the Black and African American group. They still retain stronger scores across that time frame. We also took a look at the measures of academic progress, and so again, that data, and we looked here at early numeracy to take a look at that, and it's important to note these groups are only given at kindergarten level at the Title I schools. So the backgrounds of the students in Jump Start and not Jump Start as listed there are much more similar. So that's an important distinction. In general, the map does not reveal a lot of notable differences in those groups. Except, again, if you look at that Black and African American group. Again, the Jump Start students come in stronger. And the RIT score there, if you look at that, they're about 3 points higher. And 1 year's growth at kindergarten is about 13 points. So that is representing about 2 to 3 months higher when you look at that. And there's the spring data, too, for the MAP scores. Another really important piece that we intentionally built into Jump Start is around parent engagement, beginning those relationships. And I will tell you that while the academic data is really important, by and large, the power of the program and what we hear from teachers and parents alike is around the confidence building, around the ability to come in and feel comfortable at school. And so we intentionally build in a lot of parent engagement activities, one each week at minimum. We also have a high intentional focus on communication. And when we surveyed parents at the end, 100% of the parents who responded said their child enjoyed Jump Start, and 97% said they were really thrilled with the communication. And again, that goes to relationship building that's so important at early childhood and going into that school experience. And last year, we were able, through the funding, to have an all field trip experience, so every child got to ride a bus for the first time. So they're having a lot of first experiences. We built in nutrition around breakfast, so students had that opportunity to try out the cafeteria. Smaller setting, shorter time frame, really important as we hear from families, a difference that it's making for those students coming in. We're pleased to say that we want to acknowledge not just the foundation, but the Early Education Funders Collaborative, who gave us a sizable 2-year grant that has come to an end. It was a big catalyst in allowing us to grow the program significantly, but we feel like it's such an important program, so we're thrilled that for this coming summer, summer of 19, we will be able to support Jump Start to Learning at these 8 sites. And I'm continuing to work with Kim Hinkle and the Education Foundation, and we are inviting potential funders in, and any additional dollars, as if we're able to offer some additional classrooms, we will again put those in sort of those next tier, and we'll follow those next in need and do as many as we can for this summer and continue to actively seek funding. And I stand for questions.
If I may add, Dr. Neal does a great job with this. And I was fortunate enough, she was kind enough to give me a tour of a number of the sites early on, and it was just great to interact with the children as well as their parents. And I want to thank you for all the work that you've done in setting this program up. Even as the grant funding runs out, it's a program worth continuing, and so we'll keep digging for funds. But thank you for your leadership in this.
Well, I appreciate
Dr.
that. I would be remiss if we did not really shine a spotlight on the champions for this program. We have amazing administrative interns and teachers and some nurses, and many of them return year after year because of their passion for the program, the difference they see that it makes, and we're thankful for them.
Yes, Mrs. Zila.
I don't have a question really, but more of a comment. I was able to be at one of the parent engagement weeks during Jumpstart. I believe it was last summer, maybe the summer before. It kind of blurs now, but I sat down with a little girl whose parent couldn't make it for that. And I mean, my kids had 2 to 3 years of preschool prior to kindergarten, so they jumped in there. But this little girl didn't recognize numbers, couldn't quite form numbers or letters, and she was so excited about learning, though. And I think that is what the hook that you have with Jumpstart, even if nothing else, they can learn those skills. But we all know how very important that early childhood learning is, an indicator for their success in the future. And I think it's just a wonderful program. Hopefully we can get more people on board and get that funding in there that's more sustainable. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Mrs. Owsley.
So I already said I was sad to see it go at the 5 buildings because I think that it provides a really important piece of equity for some of our kiddos coming in. Are we going to be able to, I know one of the goals is to give the kids coming into the building an experience in that building so that they are prepared to start kindergarten there. But is it possible to allow students or incoming students to attend at these buildings even if they're not in these feeders? Like if there's a need and they apply for it, would we be able to fit them in there, or is it only open to the kids going into those buildings?
So in the past, we have done that if there's been space available. I would say probably for these 8, with the caveat if it's being paid for with title dollars, if the student would have to qualify for title. But if we're, again, able to pick up some additional grant dollars and have some sites elsewhere, then we would be able to broaden that. And that's what we have done in the past for, like last summer, for example, we were in 20 sites, but we had families at the other 14 who wanted to have that experience for their child, and they could transport, and so they brought their child in. So we will do our very best because if a child and a family wants to come and we're able to do it within the constraints that we have, we will do that.
And are the grant monies that we're using at this juncture, is it sustainable to continue to operate the program past this year? I mean, I don't know. What is the status of the grant money? Are we at risk for losing it down the line for
So
these 8 buildings, or?
These 8 buildings will be supported by title funding, correct?
Yes, and I would say the only caveat to that, Mrs. Owsley, is if title funds continue to decrease for us. But
Only one piece of bad news at a time, please, Dr. Hubbard.
But 1920, these 8 will be, starting for July, these 8 will be funded absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, to add to that, to go back to the earlier presentation, that's one reason, again, why it's so important to have some of those reserves, because since you don't know till July, if you can build up enough reserves, what it allows you to do is to continue on with the Jump Start programs that are already planned and ready to go. So Dr. Neal can implement those, and then that allows you, that gives you the funding that you need for that year, knowing that the next year you may have to plan differently.
Right.
Dr. Sinclair.
I was really trying to hold back the,
Yeah.
so the assumption I have is that most of this, or a majority of the staff for the Jump Start programs are actually teachers in the buildings. And so this is one of those unique programs that actually can handle the soft money disruptions, perhaps. So that one of the challenges, right, of soft money is that it can go away on you, and you have to balance how much can you invest in a program when you can't always guarantee the continuity of it. But in this case, it's a 3-week program, and it's usually drawing staff from the building. And so it is worth pursuing, even though it is soft money, and we might not always have it from year to year. Is that kind of a safe assumption?
Correct. So each year when we go to staff, when we find out, what we're going to be able to do, we first, our first approach is to see if the kindergarten teachers are able in that building, if they're available for that time frame to staff the program. And many of them are. Sometimes you'll have a conflict with a special event that summer or whatever, or if they're taking a course or whatever, and so then we go and open it up to, are there other teachers within that building? They may not be kindergarten, but at least they're a familiar face in that building. So we seek out those volunteer staff members each year, depending on what our sites are and our needs are.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I have one. If we're out shaking a few trees and doing a little fundraising, what might the round number be for adding an additional school? What would be a dollar amount?
For classroom, per classroom, it's roughly, I'd say roughly around $3,000 to $3,200.
Okay. And is that multiple classrooms in one building, or is that per building?
We try to do 2 classrooms per building. That's the best because then you have a support there and we're able to support. We have a teacher-to-student ratio of about 10. Sometimes we raise that up to around 12, depending on what the need is.
And when would be the kind of the last date that funding would need to be secured to add additional buildings?
I think we would need to know, the other thing I didn't mention about the screener, but it is a great opportunity in May to begin a dialogue and to invite families, particularly students that maybe haven't had those experiences. So we begin formulating what the interest and availability is about May, and that gives us the lead time. That would be about the latest because we have to find folks that are available and that we can count on and give them the nod that says we're going to have the program.
Mr. Stratton, I would
Yes.
just add, I want to make sure and clarify that the 3,200 does not count any transportation. And the transportation that we've had last year was all grant funded, even in the title buildings. So the title, even those 8 title jump site programs will not have transportation. So if we were considering that in any way, shape, or form, that 3,200 would be significantly increased, correct?
That's correct. And I will say, for those of you that might be concerned about that being a barrier, it certainly could be for some families, but by and large, we actually had a much smaller number of families select transportation than what we thought when we initially wrote the grant and went into the grant. And actually, some of that savings we were able then to reallocate to the parent engagement activities to broaden that a little bit.
Great. Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Goodburn.
Thought of a question, sorry. Dr. Neal, I remember Crestview had a program last year. Was it Jumpstart? But I remember there was a name attached to it. Did that funding then come through, like a special grant through the Education Foundation, do I remember?
It was, I believe it's the Isabel Helmuth, and it was a summer learning program, and it was based on sort of a similar concept to Jumpstart, but was for older students. Do you recall the grade levels?
I don't.
It was
funded
for older.
through the
Foundation.
Through the foundation, that's what I thought, okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you for the update. We appreciate it. We now move on to item 4.01, which is the consent agenda. I'll first ask if there's any items that a board member would like removed from the consent agenda to receive individual consideration. Seeing none, I'll seek a motion to approve consent agenda.
Move approval. Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Zila. Thank you, Mrs. Goodburn. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. That's 6-0. We now move on to item 5.001. This is under action items, and this is approval of the Community Diploma Completion Program that we heard about earlier. I'll seek a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Owsley.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Any additional questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. That passes 6-0. Item 5.02, and this is approval of construction services at Shawnee Mission West. Dr. Fulton.
Yes, I'm going to have Dr. Southwick address this.
So over the last several meetings, we've talked about taking care of West and their ADA issue, primarily the elevator, and along with some other projects. So if you'll remember, we asked to approve to have some architecture work done. At the last meeting, we did an approval of the company that would do the construction management for that and follow that through to make sure that we provide that work to be done. And tonight, we, and I say we, Mr. Robinson is, with his staff, has gone through and then has gone through the bid process. And tonight, we're asking you to approve the bids that we bring to you tonight, so we can do that work this summer. And we would ask that the board consider approving Excel contractors for $1.331 million for us to do that work.
Thank you. Board members, questions?
I would move approval.
Thank you, Mrs. Zila.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodburn. Additional questions on the motion as presented? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That passes 6-0. And we move down to item 5.03, and this is approval of a revised board policy BBC regarding board committees. It is listed as a first reading. We can discuss whether we would like it to be a first reading or a final action this evening. As a little bit of background, we've been discussing this for several meetings now. So this is to give clarification to the groups that are assembled in order to help the district with its roles. So we have two entities that we are putting into policy. One is a district committee, one is a district task force. These would be made up of both board members as well as district patrons. There's also two descriptors here for board committees and board task forces. These would be made up of only board members to do specific work related to the governance of this board. And then last is superintendent advisory groups, and this would be groups that would be created and overseen by the superintendent. So we have these 5 items. We've now put them into policy. You've seen the items that would be eliminated in that policy and then the language that's added. We also sought guidance from the legal folks at KSB, and they provided some additional input that was also provided to you as well. Questions? Comments? Motions regarding a first reading, or should we take final action on this so that the strategic planning process can move forward? Yes?
Well, point of clarification, I think since we put first reading on here for members of the, that may be out there looking at this, I think that we need to stick to the first reading because people might have questions in between the first and the second reading since we marked it as first reading.
Agreed, and we adopted the agenda earlier as such.
So I think that would be hard to, I don't know, that could take, I just think that for public sake, we should probably stick to that.
Good point. Any other questions about the language that's presented? Dr. Sinclair.
No, I appreciate the clarification. What impact does the delay have on the strategic planning process?
I think we can take action at our next meeting, which I believe is February 11th, so I think we're still fine as we create the Strategic Planning Steering Committee. That would be one of the entities that would fall under the description of the Superintendent Advisory Group.
Okay.
So this is to give that group clarification.
And
Go ahead, Dr. Sinclair.
This doesn't delay the digital learning task force group at all?
No, these groups are being brought together. This would just give clarification as to both their definition and then how they're structured or their role.
Okay.
But good question. Yes, Mrs. Owsley.
The first meetings for both of those groups would be after the February 11th adoption, like the first official meetings of those groups.
I don't know the calendar well enough.
I think the first group
well-
for the steering committee is like the 21st and the
Right, the steering
22nd,
committee,
and then
most definitely.
the
For
technology
the
committee is-
technology task force, that will depend on when they decide to set their first meeting date. But this policy will provide clarity. once
Right, I was
passed.
just saying if the concern was the delay of the final action, then the meeting would be after the final action,
Yeah,
technically.
yeah, but we would work from these definitions in a draft form, even if the first meeting is before that date.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We'll consider this at our next meeting then. Now we'll move on to item 5.04, and it's approval of an agreement. Dr. Fulton.
Yes, well, this is a difficult item. You know, when it was announced that I would be superintendent, immediately Dr. Southwick reached out to me, and ever since that time has been incredibly gracious in helping in that transition. And we all go through transitions in life. And Dr. Southwick, I want to turn this over to you so you can talk about yours. And then I have more to say.
Okay. First of all, I want to bring up a mistake and draw your attention. The amount of money on the contract that we're asking you to approve, Excel contractors, but included in that was our contingency. So the total amount was $1,397,550, and I've done my due diligence on that. So the motion
Thank you
was
for the
there,
clarification.
but I just want to clarify that.
Thank you.
So you've heard tonight some challenges that the district has with respect to budgets around title and whether or not we can keep programs in the classroom. And I've had an opportunity to work with the staff and Dr. Fulton over the last several weeks and trying to figure out, what do we do administratively to fill that hole? And I think at any tough times, good administrators roll their sleeves up and protect the classroom. And the plan that I think you'll see over the next meeting and after that, maybe over the next couple of years, gives us an opportunity to move forward as a district and to maintain services in the classroom. So with that in mind, with giving Dr. Fulton the freedom to look at how he can manage that budget and being willing to work with administrative services to do that, I felt compelled in my life to stand up and say, it's really time for me to retire. As you know, a year ago, I didn't ask for an extension on my contract, and we'd say, let's see how the next 2 years go. I would tell you this year's gone great, and my work continues with the staff, with the board, and with Dr. Fulton to be a great experience for me. But moving forward, I really believe that it is time for me to move to the next phase of my life. My lake house will be done sometime, a contractor tells me, and I'll be moving on. I would be very remiss, if I didn't thank the board members for all of their support, and that's the current board and the previous board. And Donna and Joan are here tonight, and I'll stand up and wave. For giving me the opportunity to spend 5 great years. This is a great school district. It has great people, it's great community, it's great students. And, I've issued a letter out to the staff, administrators and the staff in this building, and David's going to help me with some releases as well. This is a great school district, and I've said, don't let anybody tell you differently. What happens every day in this district, the energies that people put into making things go well for kids, I think I've never seen any place like this. Yeah, there's struggles. We all have struggles, but this is a great place that is, I think, on the verge of getting better. So I want to applaud Dr. Fulton, his leadership, working with the staff. I would tell you I am 100% at peace with my decision to leave. And at the same time, I've never felt any pressure that I had to go. It's just time. My wife feels really good about the extra time. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but we're going to find out. And I guess I'll end with this, and I believe this all my life, and I say it to, you've all heard me say this, and I've said it to young administrators. We're all temp workers. These districts have been around for so many years, and then we come, and then we leave. And if we can do just a little bit of good while we're here, we've done our job. And then it's up to the next people to do that. So I'm a temp worker. And that temp status is about to run out. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm going to thank you all for the work that you do and giving me the opportunity. And before I get emotional, I'm going to stop.
Now, yeah. Now, if the board would just give me a moment. Kenny, you have been the consummate professional. And when we were going through this budget conversation, and you came to me, and you shared your feelings, the first thought I had was, I don't want you to leave. And then the second thought I had was, what a great leader. And it's important to note, and you said it, to be able to leave on your terms, to be able to retire at the right time, matters. So I want to thank you for everything that you've done for the children in this district. And Shawnee Mission is better because of your work, so thank you for that. And we're going to miss you. But that's not till July 4th, by the way.
That's right.
And
So
as
there's a
I
lot of work to
remember,
do between now and then.
July 4th is Independence Day.
Yeah, it is. It
I
is.
don't want to say
There's-
that.
Yeah, but anyway, we want to thank you so much for all that you've done. And I'll stop there and leave it, turn over to the board.
Okay. We have the agreement in front of us. Any questions? And then we'll take advantage of the next item of board comments after that to continue the conversation. But before we do that, would you like to take action?
I would move approval.
Thank you, Mrs. Zila.
I will second.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodburn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That passes 6-0. I'm turning to alumni board members first to see if they have any board comments. Donna, since you're standing right there.
Well, I definitely want to comment, and I know I'm the one who's been on the board and at board meetings for the longest time here in this district. And I know that Dr. Southwick has been a great part to this, and I think always we've had Shawnee Mission board members working together, and so I knew he wouldn't need some more of the apples.
That's right. Thank you.
Those are the honey crisps, the best.
These are the good ones. It's good for my blood sugar.
And with that, I'll turn to item number 6.01, which are board comments. Yes, Mrs. Zila.
Well, I'll segue onto this now since we're just speaking to Dr. Southwick. And I will save a lot of my accolades till July because it's like I'm in denial for a little bit here that you're going to be leaving us. But I would say you are a man of incredible integrity. That's what I've learned from you in 5 years' time. And I love your quote that at the end of the day, you go, you know, you just try to make the place a little bit better than when you started that morning. And I've heard you say that many, many times. And I think every day you made this place a little bit better.
Thank you. Thank you. Other board members with board member comments? Yes, Mrs. Owsley.
Congratulations. I know you would rather be spending your time with that little grandchild, the 2-year-old, almost 2-year-old.
That's part of the plan.
Yeah. So congratulations on the next phase of your journey, and I hope you enjoy it and get to do all the wonderful things that you don't have enough time to do right now.
Yes, Dr. Sinclair.
I appreciate having the opportunity to have gotten to know you this last year. And I really appreciate the conversations we've had and what I've learned from you. And you always bring it back to the students, what's good for our students. And I really appreciate that perspective and opportunity. And I know you're going to, we have a couple more months, so that's good. And there's one little student out there that you're going to jumpstart his education, I'm quite sure.
He's working on Algebra 2 right now.
Yeah.
Other board members? I'll just add to it, thank you very much, although we'll have other opportunities to say thank you as well. From the board, I'll say that a year or so ago now, we asked you if you would step into the leadership role, and you did so quickly, admirably, and honorably. And for that, we say thank you very much. With a brand-new grandchild in the picture, you paused for a second, but then you came forward and said you would lead us, and that's exactly what you did. And for that, we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other board members? With that, I'll, before I turn to the next motion, a reminder that our next meeting is February 11th. And for those students who stuck it out all the way, we're going to take a break here in a few minutes. And by all means, you can get your form, your paper, your selfie, whatever you'd like to do with the superintendent to prove that you were here for the meeting. And thank you for being here. With that, I'll turn to Mrs. Owsley for a motion.
Okay, so I move we go into executive session to discuss litigation with our legal counsel pursuant to the exception for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under COMA, and that the board will reconvene in the boardroom 20 minutes from now with 5 minutes for a break, and I'm looking to see, so 8 o'clock.
There you go.
8 o'clock. Okay.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to move to executive session for a period of time to till 8 o'clock with a 5-minute break before that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That passes 6-0. There will be no business conducted when we reconvene. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Except